This is Toon Talk Weekly, episode 211. This week, Brad and I are not sure if the skeletons are the good guys or the bad guys when we watch an episode of the 1994 series Skeleton Warriors.
This is wrong. I was wrong.
No! Keep back! You're mine!
No! Your polarizer's frequency will disrupt the Lightstar. It'll shatter!
Baron Dark! You're too late, Prince Justin!
You traitor! Where's Joshua?
Whoever rules the crystal rules Luminicity!
John! Justin! Ah!
The day just keeps getting better. Hey everybody, it's Tuesday once again. That means it's time for another episode of the weekly cartoon podcast, Toon Talk Weekly. That is, of course, this show. Thank you for joining us once again this week to talk all about some cartoons. I'm Jake Williams, and I'm not the only voice you're going to hear. My under-the-weather, weird, scratchy voice, I'm sure. I got my good buddy Brett Chmielewski to back me up this week. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad over here.
Last week's episode was so much fun. We did an episode of the show Harmon Town, which was like if you guys didn't check out last week's episode 210, definitely recommend it. We had our good buddy Ethan Barnowski on. I just call everybody good buddy. I guess everyone on the show is just good buddy.
That's basically your hey pal.
Hey man. Yeah. What's up, lad? Yeah.
Lad? No, I'm not.
I'm not British. I can't do that. So we watched an episode of the show Harmon Quest. I called it Harmon Town. That's the podcast. But Harmon Quest, which is a cartoon / live performance D&D sort of thing. And Brad, this might be a first in a very long time. I have gone on to finish that series since last week's episode.
Well, if you get involved with it, you're on a time limit for the CISO. You either are going to pay for it all, or you gotta finish it so you can give her your trial.
Yeah, so I had 7 days to watch it, which wasn't actually that hard. I think I did it in 2 batches. I watched 4 more episodes, and then I watched 5 more after that. And I have to figure this out, guys, but the second season of Harmon Quest, if you like that show, and if you got into it maybe because we talked about it last week, actually premieres this Thursday, the 27th of July, 2017. And apparently they're dropping all the episodes, so you're just going to be able to get them again. I will say, as far as I know, I think they might pick up the same characters, and it'll just be a different adventure, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that's cool.
But man, what we talked about last week, I think, was appropriate in that it was the beginning of the adventure. It was the beginning of the quest and what you can expect. And boy, does it go to some weird places.
Oh, nice. Okay. And
of course, if you have favorite comedians or that kind of thing, there might be some of your favorites that are actually on there. Personal favorites of mine was John Hodgman had an episode, and he was a guy in the desert that had literally 100 sandwiches in his wagon. Like, that's what he was carting across the desert, was just sandwiches.
What? Oh, okay.
I'm not going to spoil what those sandwiches were made of, but it's pretty interesting. Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley was on an episode, and he was great because he had done tons of role-playing before. So he brought his own dice and was like rolling them to get things done. And Spencer, the game master, would say like, "Man, this guy's kicking ass. This is awesome." And then you get the weird, wacky episodes that are just like almost as if they were written by Beavis and Butthead or something. Kumail Nanjiani's episode, also from Silicon Valley. He like It was just like tons of hand jobs. It was a weird episode. It got really weird really fast.
Yeah, like there was a recent Google Talk. I think I shared it with you and Ethan in our Slack, and it was with Dan Harmon at Google. And most of like the questions the audience had were about Rick and Morty, since it's kind of coming back and being, I think, Googlers, they're very like kind of into that show because it deals with a lot of like crazy stuff that could happen. But yeah, some people brought up Harmon Quest, and one of the questions were, this guy's like, oh, I play a lot, but we end up taking it into weird places because you can take Dungeons and Dragons into like crazy stuff and be like, yeah, and then my spaceship showed up and I flew away and stuff like that can happen. And then so he asked like, oh, do you ever think this is gonna happen in Harmon Quest? And Dan Harmon was like, Spencer would probably just not let that happen.
Yeah.
He's a very like by the book kind of person. He'd be like, your spaceship didn't work, you couldn't leave. Or, there's a wall, you hit it on your way out. Yeah. Just to keep the story, like, where he needed it to go.
Yeah, there was nothing, like, nobody tried to do that outlandish of things in the episode, but there was at least one moment where Bone Weevil, the goblin guy, was looking for things around the room, and he kept asking, and he's like, nope, it's not there. So you can't do what you're thinking about doing because that object doesn't exist. So, and also a couple funny notes that we might not have brought up last week in that episode. They weren't allowed to say D&D. They were definitely playing it, but I think for whatever, for probably licensing reasons, they just called it fantasy role playing because I know there are offshoots, and you can kind of play how you like to play. And the other thing was a few of the guests tried to eat the popcorn or the Cheetos that were perfectly art directed onto that set. Boy, were they just sitting there for a long time, so they were not good to eat. You just got the faces of the people. But anyway, I could go on and on about Harmon Quest. I love the show. It goes by really fast. It's also one of those shows that you really like to watch, I think, because not just kind of listen to on the side, because I like seeing it cut to the actors and have sort of weird things happen here and there. So that was definitely a lot of fun. So check out Harmon Quest if you guys have CISO. Season 2 premieres this week. That ends the seeming advertisement for the show that we don't get paid by. But we had a good time with it. So check out the video version. We put a ton of fun clips in there for you guys. But this week's show is going to get a little bit weirder. Maybe not. Okay, weird's not the right word. It's bizarre and radical at the same time. It's a show called Skeleton Warriors from, I believe, 1993. Brad, tell me you've heard of this show.
No. I was very confused when I was watching it because I thought it had something to do with Skeletor, and it didn't, and so I didn't know how I felt about it then.
And there's a character called Grimskull, which is really close to Grayskull.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I threw darts at the wall and picked a show this week. I'm just kidding. I'd never heard of the show either. It's actually classified as a science fiction / horror show. I wouldn't. Maybe for kids this is a little scary. I don't know. It didn't seem that scary.
No.
But this show, I believe, premiered in 1993. It only ran for one season, 13 total episodes. I'm not being mean here, but like big surprise a little bit. Like we'll talk about why, I guess, once we get into it. The show was created by a guy named Gary Goddard, a name I'm not entirely familiar with, and created by Landmark Entertainment Group. It actually aired on CBS. Oh, I guess it says 94, 95. I thought it was 93, 94. But actually, dude, this show, Skeleton Warriors, spawned a toy line created by Playmates Toys, a comic book limited series created by Marvel Comics, and a video game for the Sega Saturn and PlayStation console.
Okay.
So if you were a lucky owner of a Sega Saturn and had one of its 20 games, Neverwinter Nights and some Sonic title probably, you might have had Skeleton Warriors. And actually, I forgot before the show to look up some of the gameplay because I'm sure it is a delight to look at the old...
I never had a Sega Saturn.
I wanted one so bad, and it's like picking the losing horse and it's going to lose. But your parents have to tell you not to, and I'm so glad they did. I mean, I had a Genesis, dude, but I know we never had any games for it. I would rent games for it, but we had an SNES, and we had tons of games.
I had tons of Genesis games because I never had a Super Nintendo.
Oh, man. But I had a friend that had Sega Channel, which was around for like a few months, where you paid like $12.95 a month. Actually, it might have been more than that. You plugged in a cartridge that also plugged into the wall, and you would get a month worth of like games. It would update the cartridge with what games you could play on your Sega. It was pre-internet in a way, like I don't know. Everyone had AOL was like basically what was there.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Skeleton Warriors. I guess we're framing you guys for what the world was like when Skeleton Warriors was the thing that was made. I guess the best way to set up what you can expect from this show, and I gotta be honest, I looked up the description and wrote these show notes prior to watching episode 1, and then boy does episode 1 really cover a lot of this, but we'll go in depth of it a little bit. On the distant planet of Luminaire, a powerful crystal known as the Lightstar Crystal powers the great city of Luminicity. And Baron Dark is the main villain of the series, attempts to get the crystal, but only gets half of it, which transforms him into a living skeleton. The other half goes to Prince Lightstar, and each episode follows this sort of light and dark battle, as their name suggests, in an attempt to gain the other half and kind of reform the crystal, whether it be for good or whether it be for evil purposes. And so this is really what you can expect in every single episode of Skeleton Warriors. I almost called it Lightstar, which is not what it's called.
Okay.
I was about to say again, like, I'm surprised we'd never heard of this show, but sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to skip too far ahead into like where I think this fits in what else was out at the time. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So let's talk about a couple of characters. The main characters we'll talk about today. We have the trio siblings of Justin, Jennifer, and Joshua, who respectively become later in the episode. You'll learn these names: Prince Lightstar, Talon, spelled Tailyn, which, come on, that sounds like a League of Legends character. I mean, it is, but he spells his name the correct way.
I think so. Yeah, it's a little.
And Grimskull, and actually they had a fourth good guy who is their uncle, whose name Ursak the Guardian. His nickname is the Guardian.
Yeah, when they gave him the nickname, like, "Hey, you can be the Guardian." He's like, "Yeah, all right."
I really wish they would have said, "You can be the Chaperone." Like, that would have been a way better name.
The Chaperone.
And then, of course, Baron Dark and his minions. Basically, he's got a ton of henchmen who are very incompetent, but they serve him with whatever he may need. So let's, I guess, talk about the very first episode of the series, of this limited 13-episode series, Skeleton Warriors. Episode 1, Flesh and Bone. First of all, theme song, radical. Like, it's exactly...
Yeah, that's pretty nice, yeah.
It's exactly what you want in a 90s cartoon, and I think that's why I wanted to watch something with this flavor. Also, a lot of the shots are kind of cool of this Luminicity. It's a very futuristic city, but there's shots in the intro that make it look very dark and dim, and it reminds me a lot of the art and things you would expect from Robotnik City, from Sonic the Hedgehog, Metropolis, right?
Yeah, I know we were watching a pretty compressed version, so I wouldn't have mind seeing like a little better quality to see the art and see the world a little bit more, but yeah.
The question is, does a better quality version of this show exist?
Yeah, I don't know. Or would they bother if they had it?
I believe this is from a 2011 DVD. So it's come out recently, as far as I know. So at the beginning of the episode, here's something I loved about this that would have made, 94. Jake would have been 7 or 8 years old, right? I would have loved this part where in the very beginning is a gold 3D skeleton with fiery red eyes his lip sync is very blah, 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 Terrence and Phillip, like moving his mouth up and down, but he is telling you the story of like what to expect from this episode, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And man, it's kind of cool. It reminded me a lot of Reboot, which we did on the show a long time ago. And then it throws you right into the world and what to expect. What we start with is like, man, again, I know I just said it in the description of like kind of what you can expect from the story of Skeleton Warriors, but whoa, do they throw you right in, right?
I did feel like, I felt overwhelmed and confused as I was watching it. The whole time I'm like, I don't know what's happening, and it was going so fast. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with it. We'll see what happens here.
Dude, as far as shows go, I felt like I was dropped into something I needed to already have seen 50 episodes of. There was a sibling fight going on between Justin and Joshua. Their sister Jennifer has to come in. It sounds like their father was a great warrior or the leader of this city. I'm not sure where he is now, but Justin is the one who has been ready to assume the next position. He's the oldest brother, and Joshua has a problem with that. A classic story. He'd rather rule the people. But then after this little scuffle, we actually learn that Joshua has been working behind his brother's back with Baron Dark. Baron Dark has been convincing him, hey, you should work with me. I'm trying to serve the people, which is basically kind of like you being the king.
Yeah.
Also, just about everybody in the show, the women included, have the same hairstyle, and that hairstyle is 80s metal band. Flowing, really tall. It's great. I kind of wish our animations we do for work, I wish that style would come back.
All you have to do, we just have to do it, right? And make it come back.
Actually, we do have a project we just talked about the other day that we maybe some hairstyles might make their way in there. All right.
They could, yeah.
Could happen. Also, did you get kind of I was getting kind of like a Thor vibe to this thing. Just it felt like we were it isn't a distant planet.
I guess a little bit because they were talking about being the leader, and I don't know, just yeah.
It reminded me of the Thor films, at least. I've never read the comic book, so I'm not sure. And so what we get is very quickly, Joshua assists Baron Dark in going to get this crystal. And when they're actually in there about to steal this crystal, or when Joshua realizes that was Baron Dark's mission all along, he says, no, you're going to power out the entire city. This crystal controls all of the energy and everything we know in this futuristic home of ours. You can't do that, but yet he tries anyway. Justin and Jennifer arrive in the nick of time to try to stop Baron Dark from basically shattering or taking this crystal. And in this scuffle, they rip the crystal straight in half. So these humans, they can just rip celestial crystals in half. It's fine. But because of the proximity of all these people to touching the crystal, basically they all get some sort of power out of it. And we learn some of the heroes' powers as we go on through the episode, but immediately we learn Baron Dark's power, which is he himself has turned into a skeleton, which probably means he can't die, right? That's my thought. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's basically the undead now. He will live forever to cause trouble.
Yeah. And a trait that we'll learn in a moment here, well, we'll finish up what happened with this battle. The others sort of start to elicit a little bit of powers. I believe we also see here that Joshua is like a half undead kind of guy. He looks like can't decide if he's alive or dead, but it kind of messed up his face and his look and stuff, but he has kind of like a skull look to him. And the whole city is kind of, there's a blackout. The power went out in the entire city, so now there's a mess. And of course, Justin being the heir to the throne here, he's got to figure out what to do. We go back to Baron Dark's lair, which we should really say that Baron Dark is the best villain name there has ever been.
That's pretty good. I liked it, yeah. Baron just feels like a villain name, like an evil person.
Baron von Brad, was that your cartoon or something?
Yeah, I don't... Sorry for any Barons out there, but you're causing trouble.
I was going to say, I don't know if there are any Barons out there anymore.
Well,
I want to make
Trump's kid's Baron.
Okay. I want to make a video game called The Last Baron. You're the last person to call yourself a Baron at all. Starring Baron Dark. So Baron Dark goes back to his henchman, and he's tells some sort of joke about being a skeleton. Haha, it was cute. And actually starts transforming his henchmen also into skeletons to the point where they are all begging to be skeletons because he thinks he has this immense power now, now that he controls half of the crystal. So this is actually a theme through the rest of the episode, or the episode and also the series. Apparently, with his half of the crystal, what his power is now, aside from his skeleton strength and all that stuff, is that if you have any sort of darkness in your heart, if you have any sort of I don't want to say just negativity, but an inkling that you might be an evil person, he has the ability to transform you into a skeleton. So that's pretty powerful. I don't know.
It appears the party has started without me.
I told them not to, Baron, I did. But when the power went out and the suns went down, we was freezing right down to our
bones.
Yes. Interesting day, Baron.
Indeed, Doctor. The bad news is I was only able to retrieve half of the Lightstar Crystal.
And you're the good news?
Yes, I feel free, transformed, invulnerable!
And this transformation, the splitting crystal only affected you this way?
Yes!
Meanwhile, we get to see a little bit of the powers of the others. I'm actually not sure what Justin's power was, but
I don't know.
Jennifer just gets to fly. No.
Yeah, at some point she's like, I guess I can fly now.
Just I love how they haphazardly discover their powers.
Yeah.
And so I guess with the evil transformation power, what I have to assume is that that's why Joshua changed the way he did. Why he's like half human, half undead guy, is that he is noble. He wants to be like his brother and be a hero to his people. But he also has done some bad stuff. And so he's like halfway there. We also learned for the rest of the episode, we got a Harry Potter Voldemort kind of thing where Baron Dark can communicate with Joshua, but at the same time, Joshua can kind of sense if Baron Dark is near. Mm-hmm. And this is also where they get their new names. Prince Lightstar, Talon, and Grimskull. Joshua, henceforth known as Grimskull at this point.
And the Guardian.
Oh, and the Guardian. I think that's... So yeah, their uncle, who apparently is a super smart scientist, outfits them with super suits, super weapons to be able to fight against Baron Dark, gives them a bunch of names, and then is also like, I'm also going to fight with you, because that's what my brother would have done. Let's get him.
And they're like, hey, you're old and smart. You're the Guardian.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, okay.
Chaperone.
My brother had always relied too heavily on that crystal. The whole country has for centuries. We'd be better off if we'd never bothered to get it back.
Get it back from whom, Uncle Ursak? We've always had the Lightstar Crystal.
Shows they don't teach enough in school these days. Long ago, forces of darkness held it, and our people had a nasty time getting it back. There's a legend that a portion of the stone was chipped, and the energy that was unleashed affected the warrior nearest it in a manner none had ever seen before.
Like us, Uncle?
In a way. Careful.
And the rest of the episode, man, is skeletons on cool hover skeleton motorcycles fighting heroes on neat-looking motorcycles. Lots of gunfire, lots of fighting, and temporarily at least stopping Baron Dark from taking over what he may need at this point. Setting up for basically the 3D skeleton again to show up and tell us, will our heroes be able to blah, 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 blah next episode? You know, it's pretty standard stuff. And I think that's probably the best way you can describe Season 1, Episode 1 of Skeleton Warriors, Flesh and Bone.
Yeah, it's pretty funny that both cartoons we watched back to back here had someone stealing a crystal.
Oh, yeah.
That was the point of the episodes, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
To some degree.
Not only that, there's like kind of a narrator in both of them, which is it was kind of fun, yeah. So Skeleton Warriors, Brad, we hadn't heard about this, but where's this fit in your 90s fare of cartoons?
Or 80s fare, right?
Ooh, no, mid-90s, 94.
Oh, I thought you said 83 for some reason. 94, okay. I thought it was 80s. And then, now it's even lower. No, it felt like it wasn't good. I was so confused watching it. It reminded me of that show we watched. I was trying to look on the website to find the name, but it had like future birds. Like they were all birds, bird people, or like robot birds.
Was it Silverhawks?
Maybe it was Silverhawks.
I believe it was called Silverhawks.
That kind of sounds familiar. I couldn't find it, or I couldn't remember what it was, but it reminded me of that, where all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, all right, you guys are gonna fight, and here's your new names," and they're like, "Okay, I guess that's what I do now."
Yeah, I believe Silverhawks was a show where it was like futuristic military, and they like gave them new suits, and they're like, "All right, you're wingsuit people now, go fight."
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of the same.
So that's what it made me think of on this show. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was only episode 135, so not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt so all over the place. I guess probably a neat story, but yeah, I will forget the show existed, and I will press on with my life.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things, man. You're going up in the 90s. I don't remember the year, but you're going up against Turtles. I mean, that's what I always lean against in this sort of action genre of cartoons. I think also Batman the Animated Series might have been around this time. There's a lot of heavy hitters around that time, so you can kind of have a neat story, but what this show felt, and we both said that we felt kind of confused at the beginning of the episode, was that, boy, they drop you in. And if you're a kid, if I'm 7-year-old watching this, like, I'm not picking up on the story, man. You better just hope I think the skeletons look cool.
Right.
I'm not surprised it spawned merchandise, though.
Yeah, but like I said, I heard you incorrectly in the beginning, but it did feel like an 80s show. Like, it kind of looked like it. It felt like, He-Man kind of esque. Oh, yep. And so that's why I maybe thought it was an 80s show, because it wasn't, besides the intro being radical, there wasn't anything radical to it. Because, like you said, the women's hair, everyone's hair was kind of this 80s metal band. Like, yeah.
So this show was like Gem meets He-Man meets, like, I don't know, kind of, not really even Turtles, maybe a little Transform. I don't know. It's a weird mix of a bunch of shows, and I think what Skeleton Warriors doesn't have is a lasting, lovable character, or like a character you can really get behind. Honestly, I left this show, this first episode, and I'm going to spoiler, I'm not going to watch any more of the show. I think I'm done with Skeleton Warriors. I left this wanting to know if Baron Dark wins, because I didn't care about the heroes. Like, he was the coolest thing.
I hope Baron wins this all.
Dude, the show is named after the freaking villain. Like, they're not skeletons. It's like, I don't know, like, I don't know why it's named that even. Because I remember showing you guys this trailer, and our buddy Ethan, who's on the show last week, was like, so are the skeletons the good guys, or... No, apparently not. They're not, and they're the coolest people on the show. And I kind of wish I had a Baron Dark action figure, like a custom action figure now. So, cool. I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's a weird show, guys. Go check out Skeleton Warriors if you want to. There's a few episodes out there floating online. Nothing streaming because, why? Why? Who's gonna pick this up? So let's get out of here, Brad. Where can people find out more about you when you're not recording Toon Talk Weekly?
So you can follow me on Twitter. It's @brad, and my blog is digitalhitchhiker.com.
Great, guys, go check them out over there. And sorry, I was trying to hit my cough switch and then I missed it, so I totally screwed up the timing of that. Whatever. If you made it this far, you like the show enough. Thank you. You guys can follow me on Twitter @Jacob Williams. Of course, if you want more Toon Talk Weekly, we're all over social media @Toon Talk Weekly on Twitter, Facebook.com/Toon Talk Weekly, over on Google Plus as Toon Talk Weekly as well. Gmail, you can send us an email at toontalkweekly@gmail.com. Any emails you have for, maybe you worked on Skeleton Warriors and you want to talk to us, we'd love to hear about it, because, man, it was a show a little weird. And finally, the website, toontalkweekly.com, the main hub for the show. If you guys want more cartoons, want to watch more episodes, want to go see Silverhawks like Brad's talking about, go check out last week's episode on Harmontown. Highly recommend that one. Harmon Quest. I'm going to get that wrong every single time. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Next week, we're going to do a show from, I believe, 1999. It's called Mike, Lou, and Og, and I vaguely remember this, but as soon as I saw the theme song, I knew I'd watched it before.
Yeah, seeing some of the images after you mentioned it, I feel like I remember I've seen some stuff around this.
I can't remember if it was a cartoon or a Nickelodeon original or one of those shows where I used to love the show. Actually, we got to do an episode eventually of Kablam, and that's going to be a weird one to do because it was a variety show. But I loved the little, like, micro cartoons in that. That was a lot of fun as a kid. So.
And we got to do Rocko's Modern Life because the new one, the trailer at Comic-Con came out, and it looks awesome.
It looks awesome, like, unbelievably awesome. Maybe next week we should talk about the trailer at the top of the episode if we can remember. As like a kind of a news item. But I remember Chris Schmidt, who we had on for Reboot, was a huge Rocko fan. So it might be... Maybe we bring him back to talk about the new series and have him be like, it sucks. No, I don't know. So that's going to do it for this week's episode, guys. Thank you for joining us this week, talking all about Skeleton Warriors. We're going to be back next week, talk about another cartoon.
Take care.
To learn more about the show, visit toontalkweekly.com or follow us on Twitter at Toon Talk Weekly.